Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a game week edition of Pod by the Bay, proudly presented by the Bay Area Examiner. I'm your host, Nathan Bond. Joined alongside me, as always, Seth Varnadore and Robert Steeg, and two special guests. You know them, you love them from the Blog Boy Roundtable. We've got our beautiful podcast producer, Anthony Vito, on board, and from DraftKings Network.
Yes.
Yes, change the network. Nick Simon, also of the Blog Boy Roundtable. We are here. A quick little hitter this week. We've not much has changed in the way of USF football since the bye. Teams are healthier, which is a good sign, and we'll kind of get into it. We are squarely in November, and somehow, guys, there's only 4 games left in this season, and then it's another 9 months of waiting. And I don't know how this always happens. Andy Bernard has this kind of quote toward the end of The Office, where it's like, "I wish I knew we were in the good old days when we were in the good old days, and not afterward." And through 9-10 weeks of the season, it's been fun and interesting and chaotic at times, but we're in the home stretch. The Bulls travel to Memphis for a 3 p.m. kick on ESPN Plus. The first game USF has played this season not on cable anywhere, which is a good sign. Also, this week is full of bangers across the country, so sometimes you get the short end of the stick when you travel to Memphis and you're 4-4. But Nick and Vito, we haven't really had you on to kind of dissect or at least kind of give your opinion of how the season's played out so far. So real quick, Nick, first 8 weeks of the season, just your diagnosis of where you thought they'd be, where they are, and where they can go to the end of the season.
Yeah, man, definitely ahead of schedule. I think you guys have touched on this, and basically, if you asked before the season if this team was going to be 4-4 heading into November with a legit shot at going to a bowl game, you absolutely take that every single time, and they've looked like a team that's like rebuilding and learning how to win. They've had their incredible great performances. Obviously, we all remember the Alabama game, the defense playing out of their mind. Rice win was great. Navy game was great, which I was in attendance. That was really cool. Then they've had, sort of middling performances, like obviously UConn a couple of weeks ago, where they had to rally the troops in the fourth quarter. And then obviously bad performances like UAB, terrible. FAU, terrible. You don't want to get 56 points dropped on your head back-to-back weeks. But overall, when you're thinking about this in terms of a program that's trying to dig itself out of the grave, it's been pretty fun, in my opinion.
Vito, same question.
Yeah, I mean, when you just look at it 4-4 at this point at the bye week, absolutely. That I think that UConn game looked pretty rough for the first 3 quarters, and going into the fourth, and then they did a little mini comeback. And I'm kind of hoping that ends up kind of defining the end of the season here, because you obviously have 2 very winnable games, at least in your head. Pardon me. In Temple and Charlotte, but you're on the road against Memphis. Then you go on the road against UTSA in a couple weeks. And they're AAC title contenders. So what can you do against them? I mean, dropping 50 points to UAB and FAU kind of shifted your view on what the heck was going on there. I mean, those are a tough couple games to watch, but frankly, it shouldn't really matter. You won 4 games. The previous regime, you've already beat their win record. I mean, I think we would all take this 100% of the way, and I think you could start seeing the bits and pieces. And I mean, I've loved what this coaching staff has done. Frankly, I mean, it's hard to say throw away those losses, but throw away those losses and take a look at what progress is doing, and it's not necessarily linear. So I really enjoyed it. I like that how dynamic the coach is and how aggressive he is as well. So it's a bit of a difference from the previous regime.
Agreed. And as we kind of gear toward Memphis, 3:00 ESPN Plus on Saturday, this team is a 13.5 point underdog according to DraftKings. They are going to need some luck. We'll talk about it in the Ponderosa this week. Turnover luck. We'll go deeper into the numbers regarding that game. Seth and I will. The thing that we needed most was this bye week, right? This team was banged up. Head coach Alex Golesh on Tuesday, Halloween, kind of gave some status updates with some guys. Steeg, I'm going to ask you to kind of give the rundown of what Golesh mentioned about some injuries, and hopefully this team's going to be as close to 100% as they possibly can in the last month of the season.
Yeah. So first off, Golesh's press conferences are always entertaining. At least the first couple of questions are usually not the brightest in the room. So you get some pretty hilarious responses of like, hey, coach, did the bye week come at the right time? Well, we didn't schedule it, so it was at the time that it was. So those are always fun to get. But yeah, so Golesh kind of alluded to the team, and he double-checked this with his SID, that the team is the healthiest that it's been since the beginning of the season, mentioning 4 players by name with Andrew Kilfoyle, Zane Herring, Kelly Joyner, and Shoffrey Brown were back. And his quote was, back practicing for 2 of them, and then saying back to full speed for, talking about Shoffrey Brown and Kelly Joyner. I don't believe that coaches usually mince their words too much. I think they're very purposeful with what they're saying. Just because they're healthy and playing at full speed doesn't mean that they're necessarily back ready for game time action. So that's something to kind of watch. But I think, like you said, Nathan, it's the bye week came at the time where they really needed it, where they needed guys back healthy. They needed extra break. They needed that kind of mental, okay, let's stop for a second. They played 8 straight weeks of football. That's, I want the team to be tuned in. I want the team to be ready to go. I want the team to be wired in. But man, they're 18-23. Sands, Andrew Stokes being 36 years old. These are all young guys who, they need their breaks. They need their time off. They need to go home and visit family. They need to go. A bunch of them went to BAE for a NIL fundraiser. So, getting them back out into the crowd, getting them back out of the external world things was kind of nice. So I think that bye week came at a really good time, even though they didn't schedule it.
Seth, I wanted to ask you, as a former coach, what are some of the things that coaches do during the bye week? Self-scouting wise, like what self-scouting, recruiting, kind of what's the priority during that open week other than making sure your kids don't get into trouble during the bye week?
Yeah, I think one big one is like health. That's always a big one, and we've heard that seems to be moving in a positive direction for USF. Depending on the game, we've used bye weeks in the past to really add some stuff to a game plan if we had a really big game coming off the bye week, and really kind of go a little bit extra. And that does kind of dig into the self-scouting, where you're seeing what you dig into yourself a little bit, see what tendencies other people may be seeing, and maybe put a few things in to break those tendencies in the next game. There's stuff like that. And then, I think not being, especially now, it's kind of being lighter on the players, and that kind of goes back to the health thing, but letting those guys get out a little bit, get away, give them some time off, especially if you're coming off a big win on the road. I'm sure they gave them some time to refresh, get away from it, go see family, all that kind of stuff. So that's important too. But on the scheme side, you can maybe carry a little bit more into a game, add a few more wrinkles. You could use it if you wanted to, just kind of as almost like a camp almost, in terms of what you're doing to look at these next 4 games. You can kind of use it as extra prep time for those as well. Not just maybe this first one, but kind of look at all of them going forward, because you need 2 to make a bowl. So they're all pretty important coming out, not just this first one off the bye. So that I would be interested to see kind of if you could get some true serum into these guys, how much was spent on this next week, how much was spent on Temple, how much was spent on Charlotte, because it would be interesting to see if any of the delineation of time got moved to those two games instead of all focus on Memphis. So you can do a lot. You can do a lot of things. It kind of depends on how you want to move your time around. But I think for this team, the most important thing is probably getting that extra week for guys to rest and recuperate, because even guys that were playing a lot, you had a lot of dudes banged up. So that extra week should be good, should get you back and ready for this stretch run here where you've got 4 in a row and you need 2 of them.
Yeah, it kind of leads us into we're just going to do it. We haven't really done it much this season. Some predictions that, again, we kind of covered USF football during the bye week, so there's really not much new things to kind of discuss, and we wanted to make sure we covered the injuries, kind of get Nick and Vito's take on the season and Seth's kind of input on how important a bye week is. Seth, you wanted to
I do have one
go over
question. I do have one question for the group. Are there any freshmen you want to see? Because we're in that kind of 4-game where guys that hadn't played yet or kind of would be available. Is there anybody you guys want to see? Like, I know I would love to see Jaquan Smith even if he's only returning punts or returning kicks. I'd love to see him get some looks. Any other guys that stick out for you, for anybody that maybe you're hoping to get a look at these last 4 games?
I want to see more of Skinner. I'm choosing a cop-out answer of a guy who's already kind of played a good bit, but I mean, from the little bit that we saw, I mean, he's a freshman and he made a couple mistakes there in the Utah game, but dude's good. dude's a dog.
Yeah, I thought he played really well coming in, and the pass pro was really good down the stretch when you needed longer time to throw because you were trying to push it in that intermediate window. What about Vito, Nick? Any guys you want to see?
That was going to end up being mine until Steeg said it. It seemed like Cole Skinner coming in changed the trajectory of that offensive line, whether it was just him just kind of being a fresh set of legs, and maybe the injuries are involved, but it seemed to really help that offensive line. I mean, you're right. I do think Jaquan Smith would be fun to see, but like I'll throw a wrench in there. We've seen him a little bit, but Tyree Kelly getting a little more run. I think there's some dynamic receivers on this team that are underclassmen that would be really great to see what they can do. But I also understand you don't want to throw somebody out there that could possibly make a mistake either on the route tree or there's reasons why there are guys ahead of them. But from the offensive perspective, those would be guys I'd love to see. See what they can do differently, or see what they can bring to the table differently. Unless you have packages for Izzy Carter.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, I'm with you guys with Jaquan Smith, just to mix in some more skill position guys, just to see what they can do. Obviously, the depth, still trying to build depth at the receiver position, and obviously, you recruit this kid. He's supposed to be the real deal. Let's see him. Let's throw him out there and just see what he can do these last 4 games.
Yeah, 10-400 meters or something like that guy. Just tell him to run straight down the field. Just give him a couple of those.
Run cool. Straight, throw straight.
Yeah. Nate, anybody for you?
No, I mean, this team is competitive enough to make a bowl game, so I like it's the weird balance of like, all right, you want to stay competitive, but you also want to get some guys some reps. But like, do you really want to waste it when you're like in the throes of a game? Like, are we really going to break out an Izzy Carter package at Memphis? Probably not. Maybe Temple, like a home game where maybe it's early on. You I don't know. From what I understand, Izzy Carter's just not ready for college football quite yet. From people I've spoken with,
he can spin it,
but he will get there eventually, and that's why Byron Brown has kind of cemented himself as the starting quarterback ahead of everybody else. And he's played pretty well for the most part. So, when you're averaging over 304 yards per game of total offense, you kind of have a longer leash, and you don't have to worry about looking over your shoulder, especially when I don't think the other options are better. So
Nathan, you know
let
a
it ride.
perfect game that the guys can play in? The
bowl
bowl game.
game.
There's
The bowl
that.
game. Fantastic time for them to do that.
Absolutely. I just want to I'll just add on top of that for the bowl game. Getting a bowl game is more than just getting that extra game, but all that extra practice with the new coaching staff, especially with a young team, like that pays off dividends, and it's almost like a little cheat code. Because if you miss out on those 2 weeks of practice every year, that adds up, especially for keeping guys engaged, keeping them out of keeping them part of the team, part of the family for the remainder of the year. Like to pretty much say by Thanksgiving you're over. If you get a bowl game, you essentially have an entire month for the most part, depending on when your game is, that you're still engaged together. And I think that definitely means a lot. Granted, I didn't play college sports, but I'm assuming it helps you stay engaged a lot during that time period, and would help and pay dividends for this team. Of course, of all the benefits of being in a bowl game.
What's crazy now too is you can get recruits come in and practice for the bowl. Like if Florida makes a bowl, they have the kid that's their quarterback is like a big deal. He said he's coming into practice. That's happened at a couple others. I know last year it happened at a couple other spots where guys graduate high school early. They come in and start practicing with the team. So that I don't know if it might depend, like you said, when your bowl game is. But if you continually make bowl games, so let's say it's 2 extra weeks of practice. If you got a fifth-year player, that's almost another entire season worth of practices that guy will have gone through. I mean, that is really important. So, and that's, I think, something that it's a compounding effect, right? It'll every year grow and grow and grow. So that is important. So yeah, like Nathan said, maybe you don't see a lot of these guys, but maybe if you get one of these scores gets a little loopy, or you can just get a couple plays here and there. Like for me, Jaquan Smith, return kickoffs. If you feel like you can trust him not to fumble the ball type thing, hey man, take these kickoffs. Maybe you get one shot in these 4 games because they kick through the end zone, but give him a shot there. That's kind of what I was hoping to maybe see with some of these guys, but we'll see.
Agreed. Let's end it with some predictions. Vito, Bulls plus 13.5 on the road at Memphis this week. You can give me the score prediction, or if they will just cover and or not cover.
Bulls had 2 weeks to prepare for this, and Memphis had a scare against North Texas. I think that they are beatable, but I just am very curious about if injury woes or they were able to heal up to kind of help that side of the ball, because it seems like if the defense gives up a ton of points, it's hard for the offense to come to come back. So I think that's part of it. I'm going to go ahead and say I think the Bulls cover. I don't think they win. This is on the road. Memphis is looking really, really good right now, and I just think it's going to be another step in the right direction of looking at what this team can do, but they just need to probably need to tighten up a little bit more on the defensive side. I think they'll cover. Memphis seems to always score at least 38 points a game. So I think it'll be something like 42-32 or something in that case. I think USF keeps it competitive, but they don't come away with the victory this Saturday.
Steeg?
I got 48-42. Memphis wins. I think the offense can do enough to keep up here. They can fire on all cylinders. Gold seemed really confident in what Byron was doing, especially late against UConn there. He kind of emphasized the press conference. He's like, you had a really good fourth quarter. You need to start doing that first 3 quarters of the game. I think with 2 weeks to prepare, you're probably putting together a pretty good game plan at that point to come out firing. I just think offensively, Memphis has too much talent that USF probably won't be able to keep up with it at times. I do think it's going to come down to a little bit of a closer game than most people are expecting. Some mistakes might come back to haunt USF here and there. I love the aggressive nature, but sometimes the aggressive nature can come back to bite them in the ass. I think this is the game that's going to bite them in the ass this year.
Nick?
Yeah, it would just be cool to see this program just step up and take down a opponent that they're not favored against, an underdog against. It's been a while since we've seen them truly upset a better team. But I have Memphis 41, USF 27. Seth Hannigan is a veteran quarterback. And then Blake Watson, their running back, is incredible. And I just don't see this team like standing up to totally stop them for 4 quarters. They'll get their points on the board, but they're just not. I don't think they're quite ready to step up to a team like Memphis that's a legitimate AAC title contender. Maybe next year it's a different. We're having a different conversation. Just not this year. I think this game will go kind of similar to what the Western Kentucky game was early in the season, where they showed some fight, but ultimately you just get beat by a veteran team with a veteran quarterback. So yeah, Memphis 41, USF 27.
Seth?
Yeah, this one is interesting just in terms of both teams are pretty bad at stopping explosive plays. So you feel like it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. Nathan and I were talking on the Ponderosa, which is in the future, about how nice it would be, to win this one and then have the Temple game be the game you need for bowl eligibility, instead of winning Temple, losing the 2 you're probably supposed to lose, and then having Charlotte be the one at the end of the year. Just for everybody's heart, it'll be a little bit better. I don't think that's going to happen though. I'm gonna take Memphis. I'm gonna say like 48-30. I think Memphis probably covered. I just haven't seen enough from the defense against good offenses, and the pace at which USF's offense plays gives people a lot of chances. And I think the more times you give Memphis the football, that's just going to take their point total up and up, because they're really good down to down. So, I think we're probably in for a Memphis cover, but turnovers and all those kind of things can change that, and hopefully it does. But yeah, I think Memphis gets close to 50.
Yeah, I don't see this USF defense stopping Memphis enough times to stay competitive, regardless of what the offense does. I think Memphis wins, Memphis covers. But Seth, as you mentioned, it'd be really cool if it didn't come down to
It'd be
that
a lot
final
cooler
game
if
of
it
the
didn't.
season.
Yeah.
I think winning the 2 games that you're supposed to win in theory against Temple and against Charlotte is a step in the right direction. I think the step after, I think that's the first step, right? Beat the teams you're supposed to beat. The next step is beat a team you're not supposed to beat. And, I don't know if it has to be, okay, now you beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, and then you do that. I don't know if you can do it vice versa. But, I don't see it happening this week, and I don't see it happening 2 weeks from now at UTSA either. But show some life. Don't get blown out. Don't give up 56.
That'd
be good. Don't give up a 50 burger. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. And with that has been another episode of Pod by the BAE. As always, go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.